Brady with AMovieGuy.com. I am here with Effie Brown, producer and director Shana Feste for the movie Run, Sweetheart, Run. Thanks for being with me here today.
Thanks for having us.
This is fantastic. Well, I guess my first question has to be for Shana because I've seen some of your other films, and obviously, and I'm sure many people are having this reaction that I was just shocked to see that this movie was made by you in a good way, shocked in a good way, not like a negative connotation. So talk about sort of what inspired you to make this movie and how you sort of said to yourself, I'm going to make that movie. I've heard the story about how you had a bad date and that's sort of what sort of came up with the idea, but what gave you the thought in your head that you're just like, no, this is going to be my next movie and I'm ready to go for it?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is I've always wanted to do genre. After I did The Greatest at Sundance, my next script was a genre film. And I think, the industry guided in me in the place that they wanted to see me, which was stick with YA and love stories and kind of, softer material. And the whole time I'm writing, these scripts and they're not going anywhere. Right. And then it really was Blumhouse who was like, do you want to make a horror film? And I'm like, yes, I've been dying to work in genre. Yes, please. They're like, you're going to have to make it cheap. I'm like, okay, fine. But I think what was, hard for me at first is, yes, I tell really personal stories. Like I have to be invested in the message of this film and on a personal level. And for me, it was like, what would I say? What do I have to even contribute to the horror genre? And for me, that was a real, everyday fear of men. And I love men. I'm married to one. I have, 2 sons, but there is this, I grew up in Los Angeles and the amount of times that I was, grabbed while I was waiting for the bus or these little kind of daily indignities, like, it's no longer in the film, but we had this Subway kind of advertisement where the woman is giving a blowjob to a sandwich, and you're just like, this is what I see on my commute every day. Yeah. And I think in order to write something, you have to have that passion of like, I have to put this on the page. And at that point, I was really, really angry. And that helped me put that passion on the page. And I was really also, I think we want to make something that's cathartic as an artist, right? We want to challenge ourselves. I was dealing with my own period shame. It was something that I grew up with. I, whisper the word tampon, and I was trying to hide the fact that I was on my period. And if you're on your period, you don't go on a date or you don't go roller skating, or you stay at home because you have cramps, and then you wait till it's over and then you live again. Like just all these crazy misconceptions about what it was to bleed as a woman. And I wanted to reclaim that narrative because what we've seen it in Superbad, where they're incredibly disgusted by the period blood. But this time I was like, how could period blood save her life? And that was a story that I was like, yes, I want to tell that story.
Well, and I have to admit, my wife was sitting next to me in the bed while I was watching this movie, and she was like, this movie is nailing everything.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
So I was like, absolutely, totally appreciative of having her by my side. And speaking of having somebody by your side, Effie Brown, I mean, you've worked with so many different movies. You've been a producer on so many films. I looked on your IMDb. You've got 11 projects in the works. That's amazing. Talk about getting involved with Shana on this project in itself and sort of seeing it all the way through and making sure that this movie happened.
No, awesome. I have to say that I'm really, really, really grateful to have been brought into this movie. Shana and I have to tell you, got on like a house on fire. Like I really loved working with her. And what I loved when I saw the movie and that we were able to augment and amplify, I was like, I'm a huge horror head. Like, I don't think she realized that, like, I'm a huge nerd. Like, I'm a huge horror head. And the fact that a Black woman is the lead and she gets to win. And she, you know what I mean? I was like, get out of here. You know what I mean? Like I was already in, And what I also loved is that like women came to her, to Ella's aid, to Cherie's aid, right? Like that's how we were able to like win. And I loved all of that. And what I loved also, I'm gushing with love. I'm like, I love it. You know, I also love the fact that like this movie was about something, right? It wasn't preachy. It was like on a soapbox. It was literally like, if you were cognizant of it, to be like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. That is true. Like there is like women of color that like literally can go off the map and nobody really gives that much of a shit about. You know what I mean? Like there's certain things about the indigenous, you know, the women and indigenous, like in Alaska and Native, you know, sort of regions, you know, and then you have like the Black women that like literally, I won't go into it, but like in Missouri, that literally like he was torturing and like had Black women only in his basement, right? And then they were like, I think this guy's a serial killer, and the cops were like, no, he wasn't. And then one escaped, and they're like, oh shit, he was, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So these are things like it's not too far-fetched,
right.
even though we're learning about all of this in the genre. So it wasn't hard. It was not hard to get me, you know, to get me excited about it. And I really loved how Shana and her vision of what we saw, what we didn't see, you know, what was left up to the imagination. But I'm sure you're going to get to that. Like, I really was just like, I was all in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you talk about that imagination. I mean, I think that's one of the really fantastic parts of this movie that Shana uses is basically what I love in movies is where they allow my senses to do the work for me, where I'm hearing things instead of seeing things. Talk a little bit about sort of your production, you know, your sort of visual style of this. I loved all of those things, the large text over the screen, breaking the fourth wall. Was that all in the script, or did that come sort of just?
No, that was all in the script. You know, it was in my initial vision, but the Sundance version did not have those runs.
Yeah.
And when Effie came on board, she saw my director's cut and was like, why'd you lose the runs? And I was like, I don't know, they're a little divisive, or maybe everybody didn't get it. And she's like, did you like them? And I was like, I love them. And she's like, they're going back. All right, we're putting those back. And what I love about the runs is it feels kind of tonally like those 80s movies that I really grew up on and loved, the horror films. And the fact that the last run we see, you know, is over Pilou's face. And I'm like, yes, that feels good. But I think the horror genre just allowed me to flex a totally different muscle than I direct movies about people discussing a divorce in a big house somewhere, you know, like I don't get to whip out a whole visual toolbox like I did with this film. And it was really important to me too, as just a survivor myself. You know, I didn't need to shoot that rape scene. I didn't have to, because like you said, I'm not making this movie by myself. I have an incredible sound department. I have an incredible production designer, a camera operator that's going to get this shot, and the sound design, and my composer, Rob, that will make us just as terrified as if we saw what was happening in that room.
Yeah. Well, and this question might be for both of you too. I mean, I want to talk about the two leads. I mean, Ella Balinski and Pilou Esbeck. The two of them obviously are sort of on two opposite sides of performances, but you sort of like merge them together, obviously, for this sort of head-on collision. How do you direct both of them differently? Do you just hand them the scripts and say, play in the sandbox? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, we were kind of shooting a romantic comedy or love story in the first act. Yeah. So I think that's what Pilou was also like, why does everybody want me to be a bad guy? And I'm like, because you're so freaking good at it. You're so good at it. But I think this allowed him also to be this dashing, handsome, charismatic guy. And I loved seeing him that, because he was equally effective there as he was when he turns into full-on bloodthirsty demon. And for Ella, I think, because Pilou was so terrifying, so much of it was putting Ella in a real location, like a real jail cell, the streets of Los Angeles, downtown LA, and just taking that in and listening. And Ella is like, that's the best quality for an actor, is to be able to listen. And she listened with her full body. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and sort of, I wanted to sort of ask too, I mean, for the two of you, obviously, you know, how did you two sort of like get connected to work on this movie together, but also from the start of the project to like where it's going to be on Amazon and everybody's going to see it? where did your relationship go, between Shana and Effie? Like, did it sort of start was it just always happy and always roses, or was there a moment where it was like, no, we have to sort of give each other constructive criticism, but now that the product's done, we love it and we're able to sort of be happy with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question. We took this movie to Sundance and it was a different cut than it is now.
Yeah.
And I had a really frank conversation with Effie where she said something I will always remember, which is, you can't make a movie about us without us. And I said, you're absolutely right. All right, what do we do next? And she said, let's find a writer's room. And let's write some scenes to reshoot, to bring this authenticity to the project, take it to the next level, take your film to the next level here. Because while I am a woman and I have experienced so much of this in this film, I've been ignored when I've been pleading for help. I'm a survivor myself. I don't have the lived-in experiences of a Black woman in Los Angeles. And so, at first, I think as a filmmaker, it's kind of scary. You're like, but this is my film. Like, aren't I supposed to defend my film? Like, I'm the biggest champion of my film. And I think, Effie, I already had so much respect for Effie because I had seen her project, Green Light. And there was something in my head that she had said on that show, which was, the party of extras. And she's like, everybody at the party is white and the people serving them is brown. Like, how does this look right? And I will always remember that, especially when you're placing background actors. And so it was kind of exciting. It was scary and it was exciting to know that someone like Effie was coming on board. And then when we were shooting it, I mean, you can talk about the process.
No, I mean, I have to say, this could have been, just to be frank, it could have been a disaster. It could have been an utter disaster if Shana wasn't like, all right, open and willing, because you're talking about someone's baby. And I'm like, oh, I love your baby, but we could make the baby like this. Do you know what I mean? And you were like, all right, great. And we were able to use this time to amplify the movie. And it was getting the writer's room together and being able to come up with those scenes. But also I think a lot of what you did were just choices, right? That I think were quite good.
Yeah.
And I think it didn't need a whole it was just a little bit extra. And I think it worked out really wonderfully. That's my 2 cents. And I'm so grateful. Here's the thing too. I love the fact that Sean and I got on really well, but also bringing back the actors to do a couple of reshoots.
Are they still alive?
Right. We're exactly. Did you shave your head? What happened? You okay? Did you get fat? You know what I mean? We don't know, right? So bringing back the team, we were like, whew, everything worked out really well.
Awesome.
But then Ava Gray, posted on Instagram. She's like, as a Black woman, I'm incredibly proud of this project. And 100%. For me to hear those words, oh my God, to think if I had failed her, that would have been just so devastating for me. And that, I'm like, I'm done. All I need is that. That's great. Okay. Thank you, Effie. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Kelly, the writers in our writer's room. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, they're telling me to wrap up. Congratulations to both of you. I thought the film was fantastic, and I hope so many more people get to see it. Thanks for talking with me today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Thanks for having us. Okay, great.
Bye-bye.
Bye.